It's the final gate before we enter the book of Lamentations, the overview. It's the last section in this context that we're setting up before going into the book to study. And like I said, I'm nervous because this is really short. It means that the next time I look at this thing, we're going to be in this thing. So let's get it. Here's the overview. For 40 years, Jeremiah suffers rejection and abuse for his warnings of coming judgment. When Nebuchadnezzar finally comes and destroys Jerusalem in 586 BC, a lesser man might say, "I told you so." But Jeremiah compassionately identifies with the tragic overthrow of Jerusalem and composes 5 beautiful and emotional lament poems as a requiem for the once proud city. These dirges reflect the tender heart of the man who is divinely commissioned to communicate a harsh message to a sinful and stiff-necked people. The city, the temple, the palace, and the walls have been reduced to rubble, and its inhabitants have been deported to distant Babylon. Jeremiah's 5 mournful poems can be entitled The Destruction of Jerusalem, The Anger of Yahweh, The Prayer for Mercy, The Siege of Jerusalem, and The Prayer for Restoration. So from here we go right into the book. And it's interesting because, at least for Jeremiah, you're talking about 40 years. This is the first time that we've heard in scripture where a prophet or a man of God or somebody given a message by God to share with others has been sharing this thing for a number of years and really no one responds. And it's a testament to the fact that after all of that time, to see the very thing you're talking about come to fruition in its most negative and worst possible sense, that his response wouldn't be, "I told you so." We are very quick today to say, "I told you so." And I think within Christianity, one of the worst traits that we tend to have and express is this "I told you so" mentality. Oh, well, you should have done this and you should have followed God, or you shouldn't have done this. Now look at you. Look at the consequences. We're very quick to jump on that because when it comes to a culture spiritually where we're more focused on being right than wrong instead of relationship, well, when we experience people who end up going through the consequences or those results of their decisions, we want to be right. And so we're very quick to jump on the fact that we're right instead of approaching the situation from the relationship that we should have had with that person. "I told you so" is more often than not a response to who's right and who's wrong, as opposed to the relationship I had with somebody. If I had a relationship with them, I probably would respond more like Jeremiah does, in terms of the sadness and the compassion because of what's happening to the person, instead of just, "Well, that's what you get. You got what you deserved," kind of a thing. And the interesting thing, by extension, I think God is the same way. And I think we see that through scripture, where God doesn't view, if there's anybody who could just say, "I told you so," and he'd be right every single time, it would be God. But even God, for as right and as righteous as he is more concerned with the relationship than simply the standards of do this and don't do that. And we see him literally in the person of Christ express this compassion in identifying with our struggle as opposed to an "I told you so." The equivalent of God saying "I told you so" would not be to send Christ, would not be to express any grace or goodness or mercy towards humanity for what we have chosen to do. If Christ were to be here and for him to say "I told you so" would be him not weeping over Jerusalem, deciding, "You know what, these people are going to reject me. Shoot, should have listened to me. I told you so. I'm not going to die for these people." And he'd be fully within his right to do that, which is crazy. But he still chose the opposite. And Jeremiah, as a type of Christ, as we heard about in the other video, he does the same thing. It's amazing. It's amazing. By extension, how should we act when we're trying to help people? And it really exposes something here, right? Because if we should act in the same way that Jeremiah does and that Christ does, what it really says is we have to be careful the reasons for our interactions with people. If we're engaging with people on a spiritual level because we want to be right, then we're in it for the wrong reasons. That's what's going to cause us to react when somebody experiences something negative to an "I told you so" and "you should have done this, da da da." But if our reason for engaging with somebody is to help them to understand the benefit that they can have in a relationship with Jesus, then our reaction when they experience negative things is not an "I told you so," but more compassionate and more leaning into that aspect of relationship because we care about the person, not just whether or not they're right. It's interesting. And so you get down to this point here where I think there's a little interesting thing. This whole, what's the word? I've been out the seminary for a while now, so I don't remember the terms, but chiasm, that's what it is, where things kind of start here, they go here, and then they end in a very similar reverse fashion. Jeremiah writes about the destruction of Jerusalem. What's happening? How do we feel about that? And then he writes about the anger of Yahweh. Well, how do we relate to God, and how do we view this thing that's happened within that context? 3, right in the middle, we have the mercy of God. And whenever we have these chiasm or these structures in Hebrew, the central point, what's literally in the middle of these things, is the thing that the author wants to highlight the most. The prayer for mercy and what the accurate perspective of God really is. Then we go back out to the siege of Jerusalem, which we pair with the destruction, and then we have the prayer for restoration, asking a God who we had a previous perspective of his anger and destruction with restoration. So we get to see how the perspective shifts. We will get to see, we haven't looked in Lamentations yet, but we will get to see how this perspective of who God is changes once we understand how merciful God really is. And we get to see what's happened, the consequences of our own actions, and what God is capable of doing in the light of his mercy. And I think that's going to be interesting. When I think about how this relates to my life and the things that my family is going through right now, I really want to be able to see the mercy of God in the midst of the situation. I really want to be able to see the goodness of God in the situation. I think in my mind, I'm kind of hung up on, why is this happening? Why does this continue to happen? Why is there this destruction that's going on? But I would much prefer that my perception and perspective was focused on the goodness, the mercy of God, and what he's doing to restore me in the midst of this situation. How can I grow and become stronger and better and have a better relationship with God in the midst of what's going on? That's, I think, what I'm eager for. And there's a little bit of fear, as I've mentioned in all these videos leading up to Lamentations, on this, because clearly, at least in Jeremiah's experience, there's something worth lamenting. There's some pain, there's some hurt there that you have to get through and that you have to navigate. And it's not going to be easy. But in going through that, somehow Jeremiah comes to a better understanding, a more complete understanding and expression of who God is, that helps him to continue to have hope in the midst of this thing that's going on. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to what we'll see here in these 5 chapters of Lamentations. I hope you are too. Let me know what you think down below. And next time we're looking to do some Bible study here, we're going to start this thing. So I'll see you there on the other side. Lamentations, hopefully, well, it'll probably bring a little lamenting from all of us as we reflect on it. But I think it'll be for our good. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next one. All right, peace.